So the teaching assistants,
Yes.
they have really good intent. You know, they're there to do a good job. They want to support the children that are there because they normally are mums that want to work during school hours when their kids are at school, and they're nurturing type of people who are there to support. The challenge is they don't get trained or given skills with which to deal specifically with the challenges of children on the spectrum. And so when I've engaged with the school, one of the things that I've observed is that they focus on the support they can provide. The children are attempted to be mainstreamed with all the other children, albeit they may have, you know, teaching assistant support, but they need a different style of learning sometimes, which can't be supported, naturally, can't be supported in a class of 30 kids. So I think there's another step maybe of evolution of how schools support children on the spectrum, because the mainstreaming I think was good in terms of not putting everybody that might be on the spectrum through a special school situation. But now it's a case of, okay, so if we've got children on the spectrum as part of our normal classes, how do we provide a different learning style that suits them?
Yeah, that reminded me of something. I used to have a TA, I'm not going to name the teacher because she does not deserve it. And she would, she wouldn't harass me, but she would tell me what to eat. And one time I wasn't feeling that hungry. I think I had a marathon that day, so I wasn't really that hungry. So I had some salad, some salad leaves and some cucumber, that's all I wanted. She made me go back and get meat. I could have been vegetarian for all she knew. And I think one day I had enough and I just swung around and just said, "You are not my mother," and just walked away.
And to be fair, I think this is a challenge that we would all face in that space, because again, we're talking about people and their interpretation.
Yeah.
You know, all our mums and dads behave differently towards us. You know, everybody has their own idea of parenting. Being a TA to a certain extent it requires certain skills like parenting. And what they think they're doing, which is good for you,
But it's not.
quite often may not be. And I think even more for people on the spectrum, if you can't empathise with how that child feels or needs to be made to feel to be, you know,
Wrong.
yeah, it can have an even greater negative effect on them. So it requires a huge amount of patience to be anything different. But as I say, I think the biggest challenge is the main resource in supporting autistic children at school are teaching assistants that are not trained or skilled at a relatively minimum wage. And whilst I think all people in, you know, schools are probably underpaid, I think if you need specific skills to support children with specific needs, that probably needs greater investment.
Yeah, I feel that too. Should I do 8 or 9? Just do all of them.
Yeah, that's okay.
If you don't mind me asking, how did you feel when your son was diagnosed and when you figured out you were this as well?
I'll answer it in reverse. When I was
I think we talked about this a little bit, but I just want to expand it just a little bit.
Absolutely. I didn't, to be fair, I didn't talk about how I felt. And how I felt was actually, I felt it was really liberating. It made me feel okay about being the type of person that I am. Now, I talked about the fussiness earlier, or the pickiness, or of the sensitivity that I have towards certain behaviours or, you know, personalities and so forth. It made me feel that that's okay. Ideally, I wouldn't need that diagnosis to make me feel okay about that. But I'm the type of character, whether it be part of my character anyway, or part of my autism, that is very self-critical, far too hard on myself. And this gave me permission to be a bit kinder to myself.
Yeah, that's like when I do something incredibly stupid. I can't remember what it was, but I must have been. I think I was just checking something on my phone and I clicked something and I went, "Oh, for the love of Allah," and I get pretty annoyed with myself. So I can understand where that's coming from.
Absolutely, and again, luckily in the workplace that I started at after university, again they gave me tools unwittingly that helped me deal with some of that in terms of I'd always try to work out how I could do things better next time. There was this continuous improvement mentality in the workplace, and it was a positive thing at that point. I think in recent years it may have become more
Negative.
yeah, but in those days it was a case of, okay, we're not going to punish you for what you've done wrong, we're going to have a look at it and think, how can we work out how to do that better next time and use that as a learning experience? That was fantastic. That permission to fail is what I would encourage parents and teachers of people on the spectrum to allow to happen. So yeah, for me, liberating. For my son, which was,
The inciting incident.
it was what, sorry?
The inciting incident and you finding out you were that as well.
Yeah, it was.
So I let you speak words.
No, it's okay. It's at the time, as I mentioned, my wife and I were looking at each other about all of the symptoms or all of the reasons why he was being diagnosed that way, and thought that relates to me. And then there was a certain element of guilt.
And you caused that.
Yeah, exactly. That he's inherited it from me.
Don't think about that. It may be genetic, but it may not do it. It might not be hereditary. That's mother to. Damn. You know what I mean?
I do. And we talked about it earlier as well. The hereditary part, I've got a belief in, but I've also, when I've looked at the situation now for Jamie, I think I can see behavioural traits related to all four of his grandparents. And so it's not just me that influences that. It's going to be the behaviours and characteristics that he inherited from other people in his family tree. And I suspect it's also a reason why, my daughter, for example, doesn't present any symptoms. She has probably inherited more elements from other members of her family tree. And so I don't think it's guaranteed that just because you are, that your children are going to be. But certainly at the time, there was an element of guilt, and whether I've caused him, bearing in mind he was like 3, I've caused him to end up facing a life of hardship. He's 17 now, and he's fantastic. He's a lovely boy, he's clever, he's funny, he has many challenges in terms of the social elements, and he's far too hard on himself, as much as I've tried to help him deal with that. So I feel more optimistic now than I did then, but it requires work. Should we do another pause? Or?
Yes, it's been at 8 minutes, so I don't want to
Let's do another pause then.
What are your coping strategies, and how did you come up with them?
So I mentioned some coping strategies in terms of what I was sort of taught at work in my early years there. They help me deal with people a bit more easily. But I've got some that I'm also not very particularly proud of, because I don't think I talk about them to many of my colleagues or friends. Because
You don't need to talk about them.
no, I do want to talk about them here, but I didn't talk to them at work about them because they're difficult.
They're private.
Well, no, I think they get misinterpreted by neurotypicals, as we call them. So, I have to have a sleep after I finish work, because it's a quicker way of me winding down and re-energising for spending time with the family. I for a period of time, I had a ban on the family engaging with me as soon as I got home, because I was still trying to process what happened during the day, and they would overwhelm me. Despite having a job that involved a lot of phone calls, I never used to answer the phone.
I do that.
Caller ID really helps, because then if I know who's calling, I'll answer it. I used to hate, and still do hate, picking up voicemail, so I don't enable voicemail on either my mobile phone or my work phone.
See, I do that, but I won't check them. It'll just I let them build up and then check them once it's full.
I feel guilty if they're there and I haven't been processing them, so I'd rather they weren't there.
Yeah.
And I think, if it's important enough, they'll get hold of me another way.
Yeah.
There's so many other different methods. I had an admin assistant secretary at work for a while, and I used to get the switchboard to route my calls through to her, and then I'd filter them out there as well. Because talking sort of ad hoc on the phone to people was just too much of a pressure on the spot. So there's things like that. There's my communication style. So over the years, the company I was working at, they invested in presentation skills. And again, it just gives you a formula for how to do this. So I'd employ those skills in terms of hand gestures or facial...
I do hand gestures as well.
All those sorts of things. If you can be more animated and you can change the pitch of your voice and so forth, then it looks like you're far more interesting to the listener or observer. But it requires a lot of energy. I have to constantly think, right, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to make eye contact, I have to do that. I mean, eye contact in itself is another thing. I struggle when I'm one-on-one. Sometimes I look around the room.
You saw me, I've been doodling just so I don't zone out.
Absolutely, and it's I have to do that, otherwise I feel too intensely pressured.
Yeah.
So, there are mechanisms like that, but all of these things, and I found particularly at work, all of these things require so much energy to process, and that's what made me so exhausted at the end of the day that I needed a bit of a sleep. When I used to have to go away with work, and I'd have to go to America multiple times a year, as many as 6 times a year, they'd always want to go out in the evening, have a meal, go for drinks. And after I was diagnosed, I started asking for permission, if you like, to not go out. I said I needed that time because I'm away, I'm stressed, because I'm away from home, I'm away from my safe place. I need time to myself just to recharge, doing things I want to do rather than trying to socialise as well. And it's one of the challenges, I think, in the workplace anyway, of networking. There's, this phrase of how you create relationships in larger groups and organisations. It's necessary, but when it's forced and intense, it's very demanding. And so again, coping, I would select what I would engage in, how long for.
I do that with TV shows.
Fair enough. I mean, it's making those active choices and feeling that it's okay to do it is the difficult thing. After my diagnosis, I felt far more okay to do that. Before my diagnosis, I wasn't even aware that it was having, or the effects, I was feeling all of the effects. I was having the exhaustion, I was having the struggles, the anxiety, the panic attacks and so forth, but I wasn't aware why. And so once I did that, giving myself permission was a huge burden lifted. But again, it becomes clearer to those around you that you're behaving differently. And I'd been reasonably successful in my career. I decided I know I would have to employ even more of these coping mechanisms, be even more of a person I'm not if I wanted to go further in my career. So I decided I'm okay where I am, and people are going to have to start dealing with me as I am, because that's going to make me happier and healthier.
The bit controversial on here, but I thought I'd get
Sure.
your opinion on it. If you could cure your disability, would you or wouldn't you?
In terms of the skills it gives me, no, I wouldn't. What I mean by the skills is I see things that other people don't see.
Yeah, I do as well.
Sometimes it comes from my pattern orientation. Sometimes it comes from my problem-solving capability. I have a peculiar problem-solving ability that other people don't seem to have. which is useful in IT as well. What I don't know is, because I've struggled with mental health issues for most of my life, particularly the last sort of 25 years, I don't know if it correlates to the autism, but if I could cure an element of it, it would be that if there were elements of autism that caused additional mental health issues that are around depression or anxiety, those would be the elements I would cure. It's almost like I wouldn't want to cure all of it because there are positives.
Yeah, that's what I thought. If I could cure the... When you were younger, did you have a special interest?
I had a couple. I had an obsession with a certain type of toy. Whilst I was heavily into Lego, and technical Lego in particular, it wasn't so much that. There were toys that you could change their arms.
Oh, like Mr. Potato.
A little bit like that. But it was something very early 80s sort of thing that I was into. And then there were cartoons and so forth about it. But I really liked being able to, the modularity of these toys, to be able to change their arms and legs and heads and do certain things with them. And they were more lifelike than just a Lego character sort of thing. The other obsession was probably around cars, you know, not just the number plates at that time, although I was into the number plates thing. It was like there was certain types of car. I remember being on holiday once and seeing a brand new Ford Granada, right? And I thought, I haven't seen that style of indicator light before on a Ford Granada. And there wasn't an internet in those days, so I couldn't look it up.
That's going to pick up. Crap.
But I would research through, magazines and things like that, and realised there was a cutover and there was a facelift of the Ford Granada that was done at that time, and then it allowed me to pinpoint. That's when on that registration plate changed to that, and then I modelled out all in my mind the timings of all the changes of all the different cars and through their evolution. And that's probably where I had my largest obsession. But also with TV programmes. We used to watch a lot of TV.
Oh God, me too.
And there used to be a show called Telly Addicts in the 80s.
Would that be was there large pop, like men in suits?
I don't think so, no.
I'm just trying to think, I've heard that name before.
It was presented by a guy called Noel Edmonds, who does Deal or No Deal.
Oh, used to do it, because that's now been cancelled for many years. I used to watch with my dad.
Right.
Just, for as interesting I used to be. That's reminded me of something, I don't know what it is, and that's going to drive me nuts. I'll look it up later.
But for me, it was just, I reckon I could have won that show if I'd been on it as a teenager or even before teen. Just because I seem to know the answer to all the questions.
Chase. We thought that my dad had it on for some reason, and I go, it was about animals, and I go, it's a tortoise. And lo and behold, I was right. That's a complete guess.
Well, I think, actually, I wonder, and this is completely abstract, but I do wonder if the way our minds think, that we can get to certain answers quicker.
Yeah.
Not every answer, absolutely, but certain answers when you get certain information. It's like nowadays, I'm absolutely obsessed with crime dramas.
Oh, me too.
Because I'm constantly analysing this.
True crime or just normal crime dramas?
Just crime dramas.
Because I do both.
I mean, one of the things about when I was younger as well was that I didn't read books, I didn't read fiction.
Oh, I did. I do.
I can only do biographies and autobiographies. But with regards to crime dramas, even a couple of nights ago, my wife and I were watching a show, and
do you remember which one it was?
Line of Duty, Series 4.
Oh, wow! I'm like that Doctor Who. I know exactly which episodes or what.
And there was a lawyer that came in to represent a potential criminal.
Yeah.
And I just said to Sue, I know him from this, that.
Oh, I do that.
And because he's quite a famous actor, he is going to be
The
a particular criminal in this. And I'm just constantly trying to work out the patterns of all of this sort of stuff.
I used to make timelines. I used to, it became a bit of a rabbit hole for me, and I kind of got out of it. Started with one show, and it was EastEnders at one point, and it was one actor, and he was in this and this and this and this. So I went, okay, that's before, that's after, that's before, and it was like, oh geez, seriously? Yeah.
Have you heard about the game The Bacon Factor?
Yes. I've done that with, I can get from, I think, Doctor Who to Shameless quite easily. Basically, Doctor Who, Harry Potter, Twilight, Shameless. And that's your US version as well.
Blimey, yeah. Yeah, those linkages.
Because it goes David Tennant, David Tennant, Robert Pattinson, then goes to, I've forgotten the actor's name. I've forgotten the fucking actor's name. It goes to Twilight to Shameless quite easily.
No, absolutely. So, looking at things like that, I'm obsessed with IMDb, the Internet Movie.
Oh god, yes, yeah, I do that. I
I'm
use
just
that a lot.
constantly on there.
Yes, I mind.
I'm filling my mind with information like that. So yeah, it's I can't remember the original question. Was the cure or no? Wasn't it?
When you were younger, did you have
Oh.
a special interest?
Yeah. So it all comes down just to looking at patterns and sort of the lineage of things, like the cars or the actors and what they've been in and things like that. So yeah, it's
Last question,
Mhm.
because it's getting
Yeah,
a bit
fair
long, and I'm just curious about the time. What do you think about the autism representation in media and actual TV media?
So overall, I think it represents every representation I've seen tends to be the more extreme versions of autism that have violence.
No, I go the other way.
Really?
Yeah, because the one I come up most is The Good Doctor.
Right.
That's got and like Sesame Street, and there's another one movie wise. I can't remember. Oh yeah, Power Rangers, and that goes the other end, and there's no safe middle.
Indeed, I think you normally see if it's a documentary, it talks about some of the extreme difficulties. If you see one of the earliest representations was probably Rain Man in the 80s, a film where Dustin Hoffman
Oh yes. Yeah. I was thinking Rayman. Do you mean
the video game.
Yeah.
Rain Man.
Yeah. I get it.
And some of my friends, the first thing they asked me when they found out I was autistic was, well, can we take you to a casino and win loads of money? No, it doesn't work that way.
No.
It might have done for that first boy that I met on that bus stop that has the ability to count.
Yeah, so he would have been converted by counting cards. So.
Yes, indeed.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely. So the people like myself that can have found methods of coping for the majority of the time that can be a functioning member of society, which I think we can all be with the right support, isn't typically represented. Which is one of the reasons why I was happy to do this interview.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why I'm happy to talk to families and other people with autism to try and help people understand, if you can make use of the skill and you can combine it with, compromise and use of your coping mechanisms. Then
because I used to have meltdowns quite frequently because I couldn't cope. My stress would go from what it is now, which is kind of bit of the middle ground because new thing, to my brain would just go and I would have to shut down.
And I have had those mostly before I was diagnosed because I couldn't process them.
Yeah, because I had two types: the anger, then sadness, then it goes, or the less frequent the sadness, then anger. It can fluctuate between the two.
Yeah, and helping people understand is not impossible at times. So it is difficult. But as I say, I'm optimistic that everybody, if they can be nurtured to use the talents that they have in the best possible way, they can be what they want to be.
That's why I said in my interview with the Swindon Advertiser a couple of weeks ago, I was the first person to quote Lady Gaga to him. You're born this way. Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
What advice do you have for parents if they think their child has a spectrum condition? What was the signs that you picked up?
The signs for us actually were first probably recognised within the school. The school recognised certain learning difficulties that my son had, and sometimes speech impediments, and there can often be support workers at the school that can work on speech and so forth, speech therapy. You can often spot that yourself also as a parent. I've talked to a lot of parents that have seen that. The first thing to do is engage with the school. If the school haven't identified it themselves already, engage with the school, ask for a speech therapy assessment.
You know, I was supposed to have a speech therapist, but I never got one.
Which is, it's really disappointing because they are there, but I'm sure they're understaffed relative to the amount of people that need them. So
my nephew got one.
Yeah, so you may have been very unlucky in that respect.
Yeah.
But do that. If you don't feel you're being successful through that method, talk to the GP. Ask them for a referral. The problem I've seen as well with GPs is that depending on how the child or the individual, in my case, presents themselves to the GP, they may make their own assessment as to whether you may be autistic or not. I had to pretty much beg to be referred because I was employing all my coping mechanisms when I was talking to the GP.
Yeah, I did that.
So she couldn't see it. But when it comes down to, let's say they've been diagnosed, the number one thing I will always say to any parent is it all comes down to patience. Every time you find yourself being frustrated, go back to realising that they're not trying to be this way.
Yeah,
Patience is the most important.
I'm sorry for interrupting again. I had this meltdown at shop and I just went completely crazy. And another incident, I was in town, I lost my purse fell out of my bag and into my dad's car. I completely lost it, and there was only one person who came up and said, "Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And that hurt.
Absolutely.
And oh, fuck, it took me to do that. And everyone looked like, what the hell is she doing? Is she cray-cray?
And you know, people will always have that interpretation about us in certain situations. But as a parent, patience, sanctuary, I've used that word before, making sure that home is that safe place. That the world is operating in the way the person on the spectrum wants it to operate at home.
Yep.
You know, that it is safe, it's nurturing, it's loving, all those sorts of things. I've never had to raise my voice with my kids. I've tried not to over the years, and I'm glad I haven't in many respects, because I think it makes them feel safer, and they're not afraid of doing something wrong at home. And that's one of the toughest things, though, for a parent. I think, you know, if the behaviour is in a particular way. I've been lucky. Jamie doesn't have the flavour of autism that causes him to lash out.
I do sometimes.
I think
because I can't be and it may come from an experience I've had when I was younger. I can't have people pry me and touch me, because my dad did it and he found out the hard way about me because literally I kicked my leg out and it kind of hit him in the peri area.
And that's important, right? So in your dad's situation, the learning there is, you know, closing and behaving in that particular way. Don't do that. I'll approach that differently. Sometimes as a parent you think, well, I shouldn't have to. But actually you need to go back to yourself and say, but it's okay if I do. It's okay if I adapt in that situation.
Because it was...
it will help.
it was funny to think back now, but I was crying because I heard Dad, and it was like... Oh.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, it's always got to sort of self-manage ourselves, I think. Patience, support, care.
Okay.